Hello and welcome to the first of the series of LiveOps Lounge roundtables, where we're going to explore the business of building and running and operating live operated games with some of the world experts, the people who are actually doing it, the practitioners in the games industry who are at the cutting edge of making live experiences happen. Today, I'm amazed and delighted to be joined by Sergei from Wargaming and also Matthew Laurence from our Avalanche Studios. We're going to be exploring the topic today of planning your next game update. Let's start by asking Sergei to introduce himself and a little bit about what he does.
Back in 2017, and yes, slowly it became a big thing in Wargaming, transformed into the internal agency which supported all the Wargaming products. And yeah, because I passed this LiveOps game on easy, medium, and hard level. At the beginning of this year, I decided to again back to development as product director for Wargaming Net platform, which unite all the tool set for all our products. So yeah, that's me. And yeah, again, thank you for inviting me.
Sounds good. I mean, like I say, you wrote a book on the subject, as have I, and you've done a fantastic. I think you've done a fantastic job on LinkedIn as well to start this kind of momentum of getting people to think about live ops, which I think is well worth calling out. So, you know, for those who don't know, you know, that's one of the I think one of the best things. It's always worth checking out what Sergei is putting up in terms of thinking about how live ops are operating. Matthew, tell us everything about what you do over at Avalanche Studios.
Thanks, Oscar. So my name is Matthew Laurence. I'm head of engagement over at Avalanche, which tells you nothing. My background is game economy design, and I've been in the industry for about 18 years with a really heavy focus on mobile free-to-play live operations and just general player retention. And my current role is really heavily focused on bringing more of that live mentality and structure to Avalanche's offerings and products, both in development as well as current. And what that really translates to is just a lot of systemic design, community, social, retention, and all the other buzzwords that you're all familiar with. And using my understanding of design, especially economy design, to try and make things fun at all points in the player journey. And that's something I've always tried to champion throughout my career, is the fact that the product that you put out on the market needs to be appealing to players in the first 5 minutes, 5 days, 5 years. And the things that motivate players will be very different at each of those points. And your competitors are already doing that.
I love that. And I think particularly because it just resonates with me so much because of that whole idea of understanding the life cycle of the player and the need to, you know, we're not just kind of like throwing out a game at somebody. We've actually got to understand that the way they're going to have an emotional reaction to the game is going to be affected by their history with the game and their engagement with the other people playing the game and the cultural sense around the game. I mean, all of these factors come in. So let's kick into our kind of first main question here. So I'm asking, I want to ask you about like, how early do you start thinking about an update? I mean, whether that update is, you know, we've got Christmas coming up. Is it kind of the new year, the Easter Bunny? How early should teams be thinking about major updates? And by the way, it doesn't even have to be seasonal. It could be, I've got a new functional build, a new tournament system or something that's coming. So if you've got some kind of update or change or seasonal activity you're trying to build, how early do you start thinking about it? Sergei, what do you think?
Look, I will start with what you mentioned regarding big dates during the year, like Christmas or Halloween. In our case, literally for such a big events, we start development 1 year before. Because let's say for Christmas, we always have a collaboration with big celebrities, and you know. Probably the biggest scope in this project is all this hustle with the celebrity contract and then ping pong with approval of all the assets. But it's kind of exceptional. The same like in September, we had World of Tanks 2.0, and literally for this update, we started like 2 years ago. Because this big stuff happens like once per 5-6 years. But the overall framework, in our case, it's pretty much simple. Yes, and it relates to the revenue split. I believe not only in wargaming titles, but mostly for all LiveOps titles, that there is the base game revenue, and then new content and modes revenue, and LiveOps. In my book, I mentioned that like most probably the benchmark is the following: that like 45% of the revenue comes from the base product, and then 35 from the new content and the mode, and the rest from ongoing LiveOps operations. So for the base game, in terms of LiveOps, we have so-called permanent bundles, which are like golds and premium account, and the tanks and the shapes, or doublons as hard currency in the World of Warships. So basically, this is the content that we usually plan the months before. And always based on the forecast for the next months. We already, the World of Tanks is the 15 years in operations, shapes 10. So we already have a lot of historical data, and we can very precisely estimate the revenue for the next months. So basically, there is a percentage of this revenue comes from our permanent bundles or asset that always available. And in this case, the main not the issue, but the workload comes from asset generation and localization. So this is, in 1 month, it's enough for this. The next part is our LiveOps events, and for this we usually start like 3 months before, because this is also relates to what's going on in the products, and if do we need some regional relevance tweaks for these events. So yeah, this is kind of, and we have 5-6 LiveOps event in this case in the pipeline for the whole year. And the other part, which we call ongoing campaigns, usually it's kind of lab. So if we have a good idea, we just create the proposal. We have our benchmark, how we test it. It's usually around 10,000 players with the control group of 10%. And if we see significant results after this test, we just scale it for the whole population of our players. So basically, yeah, this is kind of the high-level framework which we are using in terms of preparation for what's going on in LiveOps.
No, I mean, a lot of that sounds familiar. What I like about it is you're thinking about this as LiveOps isn't just one thing. LiveOps updates have multiple scales and sizes, from big updates, which require long-term planning, to smaller responsive elements that can be done much more quickly. But Matthew, I mean, enough about what I think. What do you think? How do you guys think about this?
Well, I sense a pattern coming, which is where I'm just going to do a +1 to everything Sergei says, because like it's like you said, you're dealing with certain fixed variables when it comes to live operations and the general hellscape we find ourselves in when it comes to trying to keep a piece of the market within our reach. Major updates are around 10 to 12 months. Yeah. And as you get to more smaller, like, packaged and easily understandable ones that, yeah, we've done this before, you can start limiting the amount of like runway that you need for it. And you should, because you want to react to what the player base is doing, the community is doing, what major events are going on in the world or with your competitors and so on. But like the key thing here is that you're dealing with two kind of vectors for how you structure your planning, your scheduling. One is your product, and the other is the overall live ecosystem that you've built around that product. And what I mean by that is that a larger scale game, something that, think your Fortnites or our, more paid DLC driven offerings here at Avalanche, those have a lot more in the way of expectations that have been set in stone. and those are flexible to an extent. When you get to a lot more rabid and smaller communities, those suddenly like that starts to shift. I worked on a game for Ubisoft called Growtopia, which expected updates in the 2 to 4 week range, and sometimes major systemic ones at that point too. And it needed those, otherwise the community would just evaporate. And the economy would go with it too, but I won't get into that side of things. It was madness.
But no, I think maybe we should get into that sort of thing. But I mean, we'll see. I was going to chuck in on that though. But the way I think about it is that I think about this as I look at my 12-month schedule at a very high level, and within that, I try to separate out what's content from what's feature. And features, some of them have extended development time, some of them are relatively short, but mostly they're chunkier than your monthly update. I will often look to how within those features I can expose subparts of them. So, for example, I might have a tournament system, but tournament flavor 1 versus flavor 2 versus flavor 3, I can then allocate those to kick off by scheduling. And by planning and scheduling into the way that those features are delivered, yes, I have to wait for the tournament features to be around at all, but I don't have to release them all at once. I can make them impactful by using scheduling. So that I can do from a technical point of view. Similarly, you mentioned having to have some systems have like weekly, monthly, quarterly, different cadences because of the nature of those teams. One of my favorite cadences was one that they did with Golf Clash, where the systems for the tournaments were done, I think it was 3 to 5 days, I think it was, for each automated system. And people would automatically be promoted or demoted accordingly. I think technically, I don't think you got demoted, but anyway, you got demoted if you didn't play, I think. But that would happen systematically. It felt live, it felt real and visceral, but they use systems to make that work. And to me, that's the magic trick. We can play a fantastic magic trick if we're scheduling our communications or updates and we're separating the functional delivery from the emotional delivery. And I'm going on a bit, but if you think about the emotional delivery, then we can start playing with seasons and themes, and we can start telling stories like soap operas, where we can lead month 1's activity, which maybe say the new year. Okay, so what we're going to do for the new year. Then you've got February. Okay, we're going to do some love themed thing because Valentine's. Then March is coming and we've got, some fresh spring or whatever. But you see my drift. We can use natural seasons to tie into our game lore and to start telling stories. So this crazy nightmare world that you described correctly of us trying to keep all this stuff going has this veneer, this appearance to third parties, to players, that there was a plan associated with it. So to my mind, it's less about how early we plan and more about how do we make it seem continuous, even if the duck's feet are paddling away like nobody's business. Does that make sense?
It does. Well, I mean, usually the best way to do that is with multiple teams, because when there are fixed variables at play, you can plan for just putting down the train tracks in front of the locomotive. We need to have this thing at the 3-month mark or the 6-month mark. Yeah. We need to have a Halloween update. We have a Christmas update and so on. But that's hiding the efforts of probably your secondary team, which is the one that keeps things fresh. They're the ones who bring in surprises, new feature sets that weren't expected, that weren't part of that. And maybe you bundle in those with a major update. Like, it's Christmas, so we have the Christmas theme thing, but we've also brought in a new tournament structure. Yeah. Those sorts of things work together and ideally create a whole that's greater than the sum of its parts, where players get something they expect, which is still new. I expected something, but I didn't know what it was. But they also get a surprise. And if it's done correctly, it makes it feel like, A, every time I log in, there's something new. It's a living thing. And B, if I'm not logging in, I'm missing out.
I love that. Ella is on here will cringe when I say this, but I always talk about the Columbo TV show, because there's something about that which I think sums up this idea of predictable surprise really well. Because in the Columbo TV show, he's going to say 5 minutes before the end, the magic words, just one more thing. And that's when he's going to tell you who the murderer was. But the point of the show is that we're actually looking for everything else and trying to guess what he's going to say. Now, what's that got to do with LiveOps? For me, what it's saying is very much like you just said, Matthew. It's like we're creating a predictable landscape, but there are things in there where we're going to add and mix up the expectation. And by doing that and then letting the players call us on that, knowing the date is coming where they can, then we create that sense of life. Because then most of the work for creating that sense of life is in the players. It doesn't have to all be on us.
Yeah, and the irony in this situation is, I always laugh in that most probably I can predict the roadmap for all Wargaming products for 2027 right now with the 90% of precisions. Because, we will have Holiday Ops, we will have Independence Day for our NA cluster, we will have something for the big cultural beats in China. But the point is, you're right. So the funny thing is that it should be very creative, right, for the specific event, and to understand what's going on not only in our game, because back to the economy, if we see that we have to heal our economy because we already have a lot of virtual currency and hard currency in the system, we somehow should create a mechanics which will wipe out this currency. And this is kind of not the limitation, but requirements for this particular event. Or if we know that there is a high season like Holiday Ops, and we know that our players are more willing to pay, that's why we should give them more premium content. So, and this is the essence of LiveOps. Yes, for 2027, I know the roadmap, but every time we come like 2-3 months before each event, just to understand what we're planning to do.
I think that takes us to the next kind of question really neatly, because I think you said something really interesting about, let's take the example, there's an issue, there's excess of currency. We need to find a way to be able to sync that currency, partly because we want players to be able to use it, and partly because we don't want to dilute the revenue model of the game. I mean, there's commercial reasons, there's player experience reasons, both of which are relevant. So what's the question in my mind is, how, when you're doing that planning, do you ensure that you can deliver on a return on investment? I'm going to let Matthew start that.
So this comes back to fixed variables. Ultimately, there are bets that you make, and those are the hidden feature sets that a major team might be working on outside the scope of your fixed cadence releases. And those are ones where if they fail, nobody actually realizes it. Where we tried and it didn't work out, but that's okay because Christmas still had the expected uplift and so on. So it's really not a matter of if you know you can deliver ROI. If you have a stable live product, stable, haha, then you have something where you can roughly predict, once this event goes off, we're going to see a 20% uplift. We did it correctly, so it's not cannibalizing. But that fixed set of expectations means that you know what you can deliver. The trick is when you talk about the larger scale product defining features, the new additions to the game that mean it's going to be competitive for 2027, the things that you're putting in to keep it up to date. And those are all very hard to quantify in terms of a key ROI piece. Maybe, Sergei, you have a different approach to that one, but at least for me, it's so hard to put a number on a thing, say we added a tournament structure, it's going to increase retention by 15%, because it's not the only thing going into the game. It's a large network, it's a web of varying features that impact the player behaviors, not only in terms of when they came out, but also in terms of which players are you even talking about. Are they elder players? Are they new players? And they all change them at different rates. And so what I'm trying to say is that sometimes you don't know specifically if you can deliver ROI for a feature, and that's okay because you know which ones you have fixed. You can deliver ROI with your predefined seasonal releases, holiday releases, sales, and so on, and that gives you the freedom, the breathing room to potentially not deliver ROI with the bigger bets. But of course, that's great for you because you wouldn't be making those bets if you didn't have some degree of confidence they would hit. And so when they come out, the hope is that they will change the playing field. They'll either keep you relevant and keep everything going like the way it should, or they'll actually move things in a tremendous, like multiple factors difference, and that's always the hope. But that's the one where like it really comes down to the true but really unfun answer of it depends.
It depends, the classic answer. But I think there's something about that. I mean, I think the realization that the release is greater than the sum of its parts, I think, is a really interesting one. I think I think there are things we can do to improve our ability to understand and track those things, but it will always be the case that some things, were they not there, the successful things wouldn't have been successful.
Yes,
and that,
like this conversation is like post-launch, post-live, like actually like, into something that's a little bit more stable. Absolutely. If you're missing certain key features and pieces, what are you even doing launching, man?
Sergei, what's your view on the ROI side of things?
Look, I totally agree with what Matthew said, and sometimes it's especially in the big game, it's almost impossible to distinguish which campaign or events influence the revenue for this specific months. And we've tried it a lot with personalized campaigns, even with the targeted control group, because in the end of the day, when you start your campaign, and then there are a lot of activities on the publishing side, or the influencer marketing, or any regional beats or holidays in different areas. It's very hard to identify which part of this activity influence revenue a lot. That is why we have a kind of the bigger framework with the annual KPIs and quarters KPIs. And let's say if we see that in some specific quarter we have a good month, it means that next month we can a bit the easier push on the monetization part. And let's say not selling some special premium assets. And also we have a kind of again the framework relates to 4 big seasons, and now we are in the high season, when the main focus here on monetization and premium content, and with this especially during holiday ops, there will be a lot of sales, and discounted hard currency will be will go to the game economy. So the next season, which will start like from the middle of January until March, we call them healing season. So even during this season, all the live ops events and the campaigns mostly targeted players with hard currency sales or spending, just to make sure that we just find a way how to sync this currency. Then during the summer break, which is low season for us, everybody prefer to be on the beach or somewhere, not playing things.
You want to be on the beach, not firing a tank gun, surely.
Yes, and this is the season when we allow more test with a different mechanics, or a different way of packaging content, or a way how to entertain players. And then Winback, which start the middle of August until late October, with the main goal here is to bring more players back to be ready for the high season. So, and with this framework and with the KPIs for annual KPIs and quarters KPIs, we can at least track the overall performance of the product.
That makes sense. I love the fact you talk about high and low seasons. It reminded me that there are some teams I think that do a really interesting thing. They call it the 4-1-3-2 method. Namely, the level of intensity varies in terms of like what they're targeting in terms of intensity of player reaction changes each season or each month, for example. Can be week as well. It's actually more common to be done in week. So week 1 is very intense. Week 2 is the least intense. Week 3 is the second most intense. Week 4 is the least the second least incentive. The idea of understanding that you need rhythm, and you need to understand that player reactions are going to differ. You can't expect them to be able to continuously be at 100%. I think that's an interesting factor. Where and when you use that is obviously a question that you have to have an intimate understanding of how your players react and respond. But I think this idea of adding texture, the appreciating that you can't be always on the high, always on the low, there's always a balance, is really interesting. So we've got a scope, we've got a ROI, we decided this thing is going to deliver the value. We are working in our period of time up to the release of this event. How do we manage the scope so we don't miss the release dates and we don't burn our team out? Matthew, do you have a thought on that?
This kind of falls back to the same answer I had to, how do you know you can deliver ROI? Which, by the way, Sergei, I don't disagree, especially when you're talking about sales campaigns. That is a different kettle of fish. I was thinking about it more from a content feature setup where, yeah, Christmas is coming. We're going to have a lift from that we can be predictable. But you're right that all the A/B testing in the world sometimes won't save you. But anyway, that's the previous question. In terms of scope, again, once you're past the initial shaky launch part and you actually have a hit and something you can build on, there are two pathways, pipelines that, in my mind, you should be focusing on. One is the expected things. You have the stuff you're planning for, like this is Christmas, this is Halloween, and so on. Or these are our seasonal releases. Every 3 months we have to come out with this content. And that's one where if you did not understand what your velocity was pre-launch, you are so screwed post-launch because you will burn your team out. If you don't understand how long it takes to make a single, one hat, then you cannot, in fact, have for instance, a loot table for that season that has 10 hats if it only takes 1 hour a month to do that. And all of that should be known. It should be part of what your producers, little black book where they say hats, 1 day, great. And then from a game economy standpoint, that means I know roughly what I can fill my store, my loot pools, my drop tables, my battle pass, and so on without burning out the team. And knowing that, roughly speaking, there's always about at least a baked in 20% shit happens kind of variable you have to put in there. You can get those things hit. And then there's the other team. The team's working on the big features, the hidden ones, where if they miss their release date, it's not quite so catastrophic because the player base didn't know about it. The community wasn't disappointed because they didn't know they had something to be disappointed about. And that one is also a little bit harder to avoid if you miss your release dates. But that also just gets into general game development and product management, where there isn't any special secret sauce. It's just these are the problems that are faced by anyone, not a LiveOps team, but just a general dev team. And that's the one where if you've got a good team that understands their burn rate, understands the features that they were asked to estimate, you have designers who are very good about documenting what they want, and there's a lot of good back and forth, and you can roughly predict where you're getting at. But that is more of, I think, a question that gets into just general team composition and planning, and would be honestly something that is, I guess, LiveOps agnostic. It's not something that is just for LiveOps teams. Any team would be facing those challenges and having similar solutions.
Absolutely. Sergei, do you have any views on that?
Yeah, look, we also have a couple of rules, and for the short-term planning. As I mentioned, for our permanent bundles and assets and the monthly operations, literally we have a deadline of the 15th of every month, where all the teams have to submit their plans for the next month. So let's say if regional publishing want to create some small events for the, Poland Independence Day, everybody knows that they should come up a month before this 15th of the month. And this is a benchmark that let us be on time with all of these, the permanent and the small events. And as Matthew mentioned, for other big events, and when I say big, that means 3-4 months planning, it's the classical project management. Nothing special. All our producers and managers, they know how to work with the scope, with dependencies, and how to engage with other stakeholders in the company. Yeah, nothing special. Literally, you should read PM book, and that's it. And
the issues that I've seen, just jump in there. The issues I've seen happen are often because I've seen too many teams focusing on the dev team or the art team and forgetting about like how long it's going to take to do the QA and the rejection. If something's rejected, it has to be redone. Things like the deployment time frame, and where there's dependencies in regression testing and things like that. That's where I often see things get unstuck. But even then, for me, it's not joining the dots with the community team and the marketing team, because how can the marketing team do the pre-announcement if they don't have access to the final, like, this is the release package? Because how can they produce the trailers for that properly if they don't have gameplay footage of what's locked down? I mean, I say this because I've had the painful moment where the feature got dropped. The trailer was built on the previous gameplay footage. We had to remake the entire trailer scheme in half the time. Therefore, we didn't get the pre-announcement. It had to be done at live, and it cost us 20 grand just in the fact that we had to do it twice. Those are the things that I find cause problems, not the classic production planning problem. I mean, am I being unfair, Sergei?
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't want to lie to you that we didn't have such cases when we have to recreate the trailer for the next events, or we create in like 3 days before.
You literally got 3 days to get a trailer out. It's got to look good.
Yeah, but this is. But at the end of the day, it's again, we have a proper postmortem process after these events, just to train our internal processes and repeat this lesson learning for the rest of the team, to understand that developing events, it's not only the page or a view inside the client. It also includes community team, and sometimes if you want to amplify it, also influencer management. And with influencers, I mean, it's again, it extend the planning process, because every time you have to deal with the real people, and when you deal with the real people, you have to have this buffer in terms of times. And sometimes if some streamers at the last minute decided not to support it, we have somehow to react on this. So yeah, but again, I mean, I used to work in outsourcing companies with the big government authorities and enterprise, and they have another kind of scopes that we don't have in game development. And in game development, we have another scope that we don't have on enterprise.
Yeah, get it. I mean, Matthew, do you have any other thoughts on that, or should we move on to the next question?
No, I would just say that, if you're having trouble with this, you probably know that before you even launch the game. Yeah. And if you don't, you're going to find out real quick. So this is one of those, in terms of problems you face, that's the iceberg that's above the water. It should be very obvious very quickly that you have this one.
I kind of mostly agree, but I think I've seen too many studios where they forget it's like an escalator. When someone stops at the bottom of the escalator, pretty soon lots of other things get stuck up behind them. And I've seen studios, I've literally seen studios die because they weren't paying attention. But then maybe that's what you're saying. If you're saying they'll find out pretty darn quick. I'm
not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying that it's very obvious when it does. Yeah.
No, that's fair. That's fair. So last question before we kind of wrap up then. How do we make sure we've done all this preparation, we've done this, that, we got it out, we got the ROI, we got the scope, blah, blah, blah. How do we make sure that we maintain player satisfaction? Who wants to pick that one up first?
I can go first. Okay. Look, at the end of the day, I mean, personally, I have two big indicators. Performance dashboard is the number one, because I mean, the reality is that if you go to Discord or Reddit or even on the street and ask players if they like loot boxes or not, 9 out of 10 will say no. But when you go to performance dashboard with the event with the loot box, everybody likes loot boxes because this is the nature of gaming. And okay, I'm not talking about these greedy loot boxes. But at the end of the day, end of the day, if your performance dashboard shows value from from the event, it means that you did it right. And of course, the second one is the community feedback reports, which we have like mandatory for big events and once per week for overall general perception of what's going on. So yeah, this is the source of inspiration for the next version of this event or some new thoughts. And in this case, I prefer mixed feedback rather mostly positive, because if it's mostly positive, it means that most probably you pleased a lot. If it's 100% negative, let's say, okay, this is literally a red flag. But when it mixed, it means that you at least find this line between hard and easy. So yeah, most probably, I mean, these are two big indicators for me how to understand the feedback from the players.
That makes sense. Matthew.
I couldn't have put it better myself. I would just say, as an economy designer, like, I'll weight the telemetry a lot harder. I'm not going to go into my user testing rant, but suffice it to say, like, the signal to noise ratios, everything you get from the community needs to be taken with a grain of salt. You need to put it through a good community team and or design team with has that prism of experience to filter it. Whereas if you have statistical significance from your data, you've got thousands of data points, the dream. Is that what Sergei said? Like, you ask a bunch of random folks, like, I hate loot boxes, I hate free to play, I hate this. And then you just look at you like, okay, great. And then here's my stats. And just like, maybe you don't hate it so much. And so I'm not saying that, like, don't listen to community. This is a very valuable, it's a data point. It's a very valuable one at that, because it can get you a lot more nuance. Like, there's a human there putting that in, whereas if you just look at telemetry, you've got everything rolled together. It's just in terms of how we weight it. As people, we make that like a mistake a lot of the times. I see it where we put more emphasis on the human. And I know that sounds terrible, but really, like, that human is fallible. That human might have had a bad burrito for lunch and, like, is very unhappy about everything right now. And weighting that in the same breath as tens of thousands of data points is dangerous. So absolutely use it, but in a nuanced, experienced take. I have seen user testing, I'm getting into the rant slightly, sorry. I've seen user testing weaponized, and it's almost always in the vein of someone has something that they really want to get in or they really want to get out, and they'll cherry pick people who love it or hate it to push that agenda. And that's so dangerous. So always fall back to the numbers, at least in my book.
I'm entirely with you. I mean, the thing in my mind is, I think data was great for telling you, what people are actually doing, but the vulnerability is we don't necessarily understand the whys, the feels of it. And I think the value of qualitative analysis is good, but even qualitative analysis needs to be done through appropriate filters to understand what it actually means. And like you say, it's so easy to misinterpret because what people say is not what they actually do. And I think that's a perpetual challenge. It's one of the reasons why I like Net Promoter Score as a metric, because you ask the player if they would play, if they enjoyed it. You ask them, oh, by the way, you assume they're going to lie. You ask them if they'd play it again, and you assume they'll lie. But the moment you take them out of context, instead of asking them how they would react, you ask them whether they would recommend to a friend. You're now changing the context of the question, and the actual indication of how much they enjoyed the game is actually only in whether they would recommend. That's when we get the actual answer, because we've taken them away from their current context to get the actual insight. Anyway, that's me being my data rant. Sergei, any views on that? On the data, or on the, the approaches to dealing with these things?
Look, I'm I'm an engineer, so in my perfect world, there are only 1 and 0. So I prefer first to take a look on data, and then check all the other reports from community, or even the industry reports. But yeah, I mean, sometimes data. I mean, if you squeeze data a lot, it will tell you whatever you want. Yeah. This is why you also have to take a look on all of this data with some critical thinking way of operating. But I remember days like 12 years ago when I joined Wargaming, when we didn't have data, and then it was nightmare. And mostly the decision making was who were louder, not smarter. So that is why I would prefer to have not the best data in the world, but at least I prefer to have it.
Yeah. So last thing, what's the one thing you'd like the others to take away from this conversation? Matthew, what's that one thing?
I'll go back to the tried and tested. You are not releasing your game in a vacuum. So I in terms of mistakes that get made, like they're legion. Like it's really hard to make a game, just any game, not even a good one. But the problem that you face isn't that someone, when you release your game, has made a good game around the same time. When you get into LiveOps, you talk about the long term. You talk about days and months and weeks and years. And what you face is not really the case like, that, GTA came out, we're screwed, right? No, it's the case that GTA 5 came out on the PS3 and players are still playing that with hundreds of thousands of them at any given time, and that you are in competition with that. Sergei, I think actually in your talk you mentioned it's not even just games, right? It's like, it's TikTok, it's streamers, and all of that is competition for player eyeballs and time. And here's a great example. Take Wuthering Waves. It's a action RPG gacha-driven game, and it's very well made in the same vein as Genshin Impact. And that is great and all, but it did well, by the way. It's fighting against the investment that players have put into Genshin Impact, though. It has to make its case not only as a good game, not only as something that's like right for this time in the market and fun, which it all is. It has to make the case that the years of effort that you, the player, have put into Genshin Impact, you're okay with giving that up. Because a live game is a commitment. It's something where it's actually better and more fun, if we did our jobs right, to come back every day or every week and see what's changed, and see what's surprising. And to move off to something else means eliminating all of that. And so you are also in competition with the community that is built around it, the lore, the mindset, the meta. All of that conspires to keep players away from your product and with the ones they've already committed to for days and months and weeks and years. And I cannot stress enough just how hard it is to break those bonds. And because what you're doing is you're trying to make a good game, which is already, we know, really hard, that also achieves that and does so consistently enough over a long enough time period that you can prevent other people from doing what you're attempting to do down the line.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's just proven by the Newzoo stats that talked about something like 12% of players' time was spent on new games. That's, kind of nails that. Mm-hmm. But talking of a game that people could play continuously, Sergei, what's your last one thing that you would like people to play?
Look, I want to wrap up with because we've been talking a lot about content and the scope and the event, and literally the most expensive part of operating live service games is content production. Yeah. And my point here is that, and I try to promote this idea of people's LiveOps, where games should involve their players to create the content, and I mean any content, because when you somehow incentivize your players to stream on Twitch, or to create reels, or to create any a piece of content, readable or other way of audible, it gives your more room in terms of your part of content production. Because at the end of the day, our players have to have a way to spend time with our universe. And that is why the one thing that I want to everybody, take away from this conversation is LiveOps. It's not only inside your studio on your team. LiveOps, it's also outside. And these people's LiveOps is the opportunity that we should leverage, especially in the time when games like Minecraft and Roblox show the potential. Okay, everybody can say that they are different games, but let's see what will be with the Battlefield and the idea to integrate with Godot and create a modding environment for players. So let's see next year. I believe it will be the biggest growth opportunity in terms of content production.
Makes sense. Well, thank you very much for that. So I'd like to kind of thank Sergei and Matthew. I've been your host, Oscar from Arcanix, and hopefully we'll be doing a lot more of these things. Thank you very much for joining the LiveOps Lounge Roundtable.